This is the Horse Radio Network.
Taylor Harris Insurance Services. There for all equestrians, amateur and the professional. For all types and all breeds. No matter what discipline or level, Taylor Harris is committed to excellence in serving you and protecting the horses you love. Taylor Harris Insurance Services, your worldwide equine insurance specialists.
This is episode 245 of the podcast. I'm Tanya Johnston, mental skills coach, and this is Inside Your Ride. Today's podcast is brought to you by the Taylor Harris Insurance Services and the Plaid Horse Magazine. On today's show, I speak with top rider and trainer Samantha Schaefer about her career and recent success at Derby finals. I'm also speaking with clinical sports psychologist Eddie O'Connor about improving your sleep to improve your performance.
The podcast presents Inside Your Ride with Tanya Johnston.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I wanted to talk for a moment about curiosity. It's a theme you've heard me mention before, as it's something that's so incredibly valuable to put front and center on your journey as an athlete. No matter how long you've ridden and competed, maintaining an attitude of self-discovery is so essential. I would guess that's part of why you're here listening, right? So kudos for that. And I want to encourage you to keep it up. You want to stay current and ask yourself questions like, what is helping me prepare? How is my focus? What can I do to support myself? What can I do to boost my confidence this weekend? How can I minimize that mistake I made yesterday in the future? Right? So staying curious is also about refusing to accept your current limits, right? You want to ask, why not? Or what strategies can I use to help us achieve this goal? How can I break through this block that I keep bumping up against? What can I do or think that is different? Continue to ask yourself those questions so that you remind yourself that you're always creating and recreating who you are as an athlete, right? It's a constant, ever evolving process and journey. So you want to take the time to ask yourself these questions. And then, you're tracking both what works and what needs improvement in order to discover what you need to do to adapt, to learn, and develop, right? This will help you bring out your best. Ask yourself, how can I do more to help myself and my team? What can I do to improve? The curiosity to try something new or develop our own abilities is a superpower that we all possess, regardless of what level you ride, how long you've been riding. It's something we want to continue to do for as long as we are athletes. So that is my pep talk of this month on staying curious about yourself and continuing to explore and develop your skills. Now let's get to my conversation with top rider and trainer, Samantha Schaefer.
Do you love horses? Becoming a member of Grayson Jockey Club Research Foundation is a great way to give back to the horses and ponies you love. Donate today. Visit www.grayson-jockeyclub.org. That's www.grayson-jockeyclub.org. Are you wishing you could be more comfortable right now listening to the Plaidcast? I bet you are. You can get all decked out in the Plaid Horse apparel at plaidhorsestore.com. We have plaid pajama pants, sweatshirts, hats and accessories, saddle pads, and tees of all shapes and sizes. Everything is comfy fit. We go up to 2XL in most items and XL generous fit in other items. And we want everyone to be included and feel welcome and be able to tell from everyone else they see at the horse show that the horse show is the best, most fun, welcoming, inclusive place to be. So come join us at plaidhorsestore.com.
Samantha Schaefer is a top rider and trainer who had the good fortune of riding with some of the very best trainers in the business during her junior career. She won and had amazing success in the ponies, junior hunters, junior jumpers, and equitation divisions, winning national titles for many years with countless horses and ponies, such as the Washington Equitation Finals and USET Finals. Samantha rode for Baylor University and led the country in the amateur owner hunters before becoming a professional in 2017. She now has wins and national titles in the international derbies, high performance hunters, and open jumpers. Samantha now works alongside her mother and fellow trainer, Kate Conover at Shadow Ridge. Thank you so much for joining me today, Samantha.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, this is great. Congratulations on such a wonderful and successful Derby finals.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations on being reserve champion. And, maybe that's a great place for us to start as far as, looking at that experience or that week. Like, what are some of I like sort of to ask, like, what are the most fun things? Because I think fun, like just the enjoyment factor is such a big part of excellence. Do you know what I mean? And so I think that's an important piece. And I also think it's important for everyone to know, like listening, like no matter who you are or the level you ride at, there's always challenges in any experience. And like handling them is just part of the process. Like, so were there any, like, as far as fun goes, what stands out for you that week?
So this year was a little bit different for me. My typical Derby horse In the Know, who I feel like everyone kind of, knows and is, kind of associated with me. He actually sat the finals out, and I had an amazing opportunity to bring in a new horse who was actually just supposed to go to the green incentive and the Derby championships to just do the 3-6 green incentive finals. Mm-hmm. And he had qualified for Derby finals, and his owners, the Rohrbaugh family, had said, if you'd like to show him at Derby finals, we'd love for him to go and have the experience. So we kind of entered him in the Derby finals as just a way to kind of see how he would do. And he is, like I said, he's a green hunter. So we didn't really have a whole lot of expectations, which I think made the whole experience just that much better. He's only been under the lights, I think, one time, and that was in Wellington this year. So to come out and have a handy round like he did was just like, we were just so impressed with him and just overall excited to have a horse like that step up to the plate.
Right. No, absolutely. And for you as a rider, like, is there anything that you approach with a green horse that like you want to be extra clear for yourself, like as you prepare or as you think about things or approach things like from the mental side? With one that's new like that?
That horse he's super cool in his head. And, obviously I wanted to make sure he was prepared, and I felt that it wasn't going to be too much of a challenge. When I walked the course, I did give myself like a few places. If he started to feel like he needed a minute, maybe I would jump a low option here or there if I felt like it was necessary. So I guess I did kind of have a plan A and a plan B, but he just walked in the ring and was so confident. I just, kind of rode the horse that I had, and he just really was with me and stepped up to the plate the whole way around. So I kind of just kept rolling with it. And at the end, it was an awesome feeling.
Yeah. Super. In a situation like that, I mean, obviously, even though, he's a new horse to that kind of level and that kind of thing, I'm sure that the feelings and the atmosphere provides like its own level of pressure. Like, how do you typically approach pressure situations? Like, what do you do for yourself? Maybe like as you prepare, like before you get on, or like ways that you're talking to yourself? Like, is there a system for you at all around that?
For me, I find myself to always do my best when I'm busy. If you ever see me early for a course walk, something's wrong. Just in general, I like to stay busy. Luckily, in those kind of situations, I had other horses competing that week. So that kind of kept me a little bit, focused on some other things. I really try not to overthink anything. I think if you just start overthinking about, what could go wrong, then you forget what could go right. And I think it's just important that, at the end of the day, they're horses, and it's probably, more to us a big deal than it is to them. And I think if you just stay cool and just kind of keep doing, what you normally would, and don't change, don't overdo or underdo, don't change things, and just kind of keep going with what you know. And like I said, my biggest thing is, I would say, is I try to stay busy. I don't let myself sit around at the show, and, I don't really watch a whole lot. I watch after sometimes, but, I kind of, after I walk the course, I go back to the barn, I'll polish my boots. You don't find me, over analyzing what other people do. I try to just kind of stick to my plan and, stay confident in that.
Right. And you said something that I think is an interesting perspective of just, reminding ourselves that like the horse doesn't know it's special, like a special, you know what I mean? Like keeping it like really empathizing with their perspective of like, hey, this is another, day together, another day of training, really, they don't know it's like a special thing. And that's a good way to maybe ground yourself and like, okay, we're just here in this experience. It's not, it's not elevated in neon lights to them. Like I don't need to make it special, but that's a great way to look.
Like a lot of times I think the rider's energy can have a lot to do with the horse's performance. So, just try to keep yourself as cool and calm as you can and go on with it.
Right. Yeah, no, totally. So what about, it sounds like that, we think about those situations at shows just when there's a lot going on and there's a lot of distractions. It sounds like you're someone that might use distractions to your advantage. I know some people get flustered when there's just more chaos or more things that are unexpected. Like, how do you handle the unexpected? Like, how do you take things in stride that way? Or how do you handle distractions?
I think overall, everyone would say I'm a pretty calm person. I try to focus on the things that I can control, and I don't really let anything, get under my skin. So, I think one thing that I would do if I feel myself getting a little nervous or anticipating something, I'll repeat my plan and like my course and kind of, I go over it. I've always done that since I was a junior. I'll find myself just kind of repeating, going over, what's supposed to happen. And eventually it just kind of becomes second nature and feels, natural.
So is that like you're talking through it, like, okay, loose to one, stay out, like that kind of thing? Or is that?
Yeah, I guess so. I kind of like talk myself through it at the gate and just, don't let the environment distract me. I just kind of keep myself focused on what I'm doing.
That's it.
Controlling what I can control.
Yes, absolutely. Such an important principle in sports psychology. We talk about that all the time of, controlling the controllables. Yeah, absolutely. Right. The idea of being like in the chute or a back gate or something where when scores are being announced, how do you, I think for some people that don't have a lot of experience, sometimes that can be an overwhelm to like hear somebody ahead of you get throw a big score or something. Do you even let that stuff in, or are you just saying like centered on repeating your plan?
For sure, just keep repeating your plan. And like I said, like control what you can control. You can't control how the horses before and after you are performing. You just have to do your absolute best in that moment. And I think take Derby finals for an example. I came back in the 10th position, and when I got off the horse, I would have been ecstatic to be in the top, 6. And as it all kind of fell apart, and some of the horses had uncharacteristic mistakes, it's all kind of falling into place for me, which is fantastic. But again, that happening had nothing to do with me. I could only control my performance and my preparation and what I was able to do. So.
Yeah, for sure. Is there anything else like you're doing on foot before you get on, as far as like, just mental preparation wise before a Derby? You've had so much success and you're so consistent with your horse in the know. And, I just know that there's a lot of miles there. I'm just wondering if there's things you would share that people could learn from, maybe that you're doing in your preparation in the morning or anything like that.
I'm lucky that I really do get to know my horses really well. I kind of live in the barn and I'm around them 24/7, it feels. So I know them really well. And I think obviously I want to make sure that we're well prepared and, the horse really feels not too fresh, not too quiet. I also would never put a horse in a situation that I didn't think they were ready for. So I think that's the first thing, of course. But just, on show day, just making sure they feel like happy and loose and quiet. And, I think once you do your preparation, once you get on to warm up, it's go time. You have to let maybe you get on, your horse feels a little fresh. You can't let that affect you. You just kind of have to ride, the horse you have in the moment and make the adjustments as you go. But just do your best to be prepared. But then once it's, you walk in the ring, it's go time. So, ride the horse you have. And
right.
That's what I do.
Yeah. And I think that is something, perhaps that's a challenge for amateurs that, have the one horse and they might get on and it doesn't feel the way it usually feels, or it is a little bit this or that or the other thing. And that can kind of get in their head and like, wait, it's different. And you know what I mean? Like that the comparison between the horse they wish they had and the horse they're actually riding in the warm-up ring can kind of mess people up mentally of like, instead of just acceptance of like, okay, so let's see, like, what are some solutions? How can I cope with this as best I can?
Right.
But that's what you're saying is like riding the horse you have right now is like the answer, right? And not getting stuck in like,
Yeah, I would say like one of the things I always tell my students is, you have to listen to the horses a little bit. And like, I always say, if it feels slow, it probably is. Or if it feels fast, you're probably right, So make the adjustments as necessary. I always tell the kids, Pony Finals was a big event last, a couple weeks ago. And I said, look, once you're in the ring, it's all you. If you walk in and they feel like they get a burst of energy, then you have to, manage that. And like I said, what you feel is more than likely correct. So you've got to, listen to your horse and make the adjustments as necessary. So. Right.
No, totally. And I think that bespeaks a certain amount of trust, like that you trust what you feel. Like, wait a second, like as I picked up the canter, like I'm on this big step, like I got to manage that, like just trust, like what you're saying, supporting them and trusting them. Like, okay, how am I going to deal with this and making adjustments in the moment? Yeah. So as far as like challenges, whether it's like weather, obviously there was a lot of rain in Kentucky, or like things that if the day starts to go in sort of a tough direction, do you have any go-tos of like how you try to turn it around? Because I know that's something that sometimes people also can get caught in, is like they start feeling like there are signs that the day is not going to go well. But I'm always like, no, remind yourself like what you can do to turn it around, and make sure that you stay resilient. Do you have any of your top solutions that you kind of tend to go to?
I would always say like, don't dwell on like the little bad things or the one bad round or one horse that was maybe out of character that day. I think that I'm very good at letting things go for the most part. Like when I have a bad round, I try not to bring it back to the barn, and I try not to, I might be frustrated or I think about obviously what could I have done differently? I always say like, try to take something from every round. So I guess when you have something that doesn't go your way, try to just think, how could I have made that better? Or how could I have ridden that differently or prepared differently? But at the end of the day, there's always another horse show next week. And that's something that my mom has been really big on ever since I was on ponies. If we had a bad week or a bad show or, a bad day, it was kind of her joke. But it really is true that there really is always another horse show next week. And at the end of the day, we're doing this for fun and for enjoyment. And, you can't beat yourself up over, the little mistakes, and, try to learn from them and don't dwell on it. It's not fair to the staff and everybody that also works so hard for us to be able to do this. Try to learn from it. And, it's okay to be a little frustrated or upset, but don't let it carry over.
Right. No, absolutely. Yeah. That's such a important perspective. We talk about having, amnesia for the mistakes and a memory for the successes, right? So it's like you take the lesson, but the actual event, the actual experience of it, that's what you let go, right? So you extract sort of the important information from it and then move forward. Yeah, that's, and it sounds so helpful that your mom was able to help you with that so early. I think that the earlier, the better with those kinds of concepts.
Yeah, I was really lucky. Like, I think she always saw the drive that I had and, just how I wanted it so bad that she never pushed me, which I think is huge at a young age.
Yeah.
It was always something that I really wanted, and I was motivated to do. And, she always knew that if we came off a bad show or, we didn't have the result we had hoped for, she didn't need to give me a lecture in the car ride home about how, things didn't go right, she always tried to stay positive. And I think that has a huge,
Yeah.
I think it's had a huge part of
Yes.
me mentally being able to be so confident and cool in high pressure situations, because I was doing it for myself. It wasn't like I was trying to please anyone or make anyone else happy or ride for someone else's approval. So
yeah, no, that's incredible. That's a real gift for sure. That also is what enables longevity. Like, when you find your core drive and you align with that, that's something that sees you through. Whereas when other outside factors are motivating you or trying to motivate you, then those kind of ebb and flow and come and go, like results come and go, right? You want to have that core intrinsic motivation to sort of carry you through both the highs and the lows, like not getting too lost in either and just like staying the course. So just obviously you're someone who's ridden for your whole life. You've been at like so many horse shows, just observationally, like what kinds of mental errors do you see riders making at horse shows the most? Like, what do you think from your perspective, what are some of the mental errors that take people out of the moment or out of the day, and how might you solve one or two of them?
I think it goes back to probably overthinking. I see a lot of people trying to make, something more complicated than it is.
Right.
So I would just say, just probably overthinking and being caught up a little bit in the environment of it all. And so, I guess mental errors would just be overthinking and forgetting to ride, back to what I was saying, off of your feel and listening to the horse.
And so would you have, do you ever have a student? To me, then what comes to mind is like, helping someone keep it simple rather than like adding so much layers and minutia. And you know what I mean? Like, is that kind of what you would do, like to help someone that you saw was overthinking?
Yeah. If I'm going over a course with a pony kid, for an example, and I can tell that they're mentally just kind of scrambling to keep everything together, a lot of times I'll give them, 2 or 3 things that I think are super important for them to focus on. And, I'll say, after, the first jump, you need to land and canter forward. And then the rest of the round, just focus on your rhythm and your straightness, a few things to kind of give them something, when they get nervous and tense up, a few, like 2 to 3 key points that I want them to think about. The last line's going to get steady, or, make sure he's not getting too low. Every horse is different. But just keep him in front of your leg. Like, there's always a few things, depending on the horse and rider, that I try to, especially with the young kids, you don't want to make it too complicated. And just kind of give them a few key things that they can really focus on before going into their round, especially like I was saying, going back to pony finals, the kids, the environment definitely gets to them, right? I remember as a kid, just that moment this year was different, walking down the ramp versus up the ramp to the walnut, or we went to a lot of different places when I was doing pony finals. But just that moment of, coming in towards the end and knowing, the performance you need to put in, you have one shot to do it. And it's obvious, we all do this because we're competitive and we want to do our best. So just to try to keep them focused and, give them a few easy things to remember.
Right.
So.
Right. Definitely. Yeah. And I think sometimes, unfortunately, the more special the environment, sometimes that creates this desire in folks to like do more, or like, have a more complicated plan, or have, more detail than normal, and all these kinds of things. And it's well-intentioned, but it really can kind of muck up the works when it's just feels overwhelming and like there's so much to it. And that kind of leads into my next question around, we're starting, medal finals time of year, and you've had so many amazing successes and wins. As you look back on your equitation years, like, are there any moments in particular that stand out as far as like your resilience or your focus? Any particular days or times or classes that stand out that way?
I guess looking back, if you want to talk about moments, I think the moments for me that was probably one of the most special moments during my equitation career would just be those final moments in the tunnel at Harrisburg,
Mm-hmm.
when Andre was kind of giving me the last minute advice. You know, you never forget like what that feeling is. And
Yeah.
just watching a few of our own kids now get to experience it, it's neat. And I think the energy is crazy. And even watching in the stands, you know, if there's a good rider that's having a good round, I mean, you could hear a pin drop. And at the end, you know, the applause. And I mean, you live for that kind of energy and environment. So I think that was always really special. For me, one of my favorite equitation finals moments had to have been USET finals. I did it 2 years, and the first year I was on top going into the Final Four, and I really let it fall through my hands. I kind of gave it away, I guess you could say. I ended up fourth. I had time falls, and I fell apart in the Final Four, which I shouldn't have let that happen. And I think I came back the next year really hungry, and I didn't do as well in the flat phase, and then I kind of climbed back up through the gymnastics, and my show jumping phase was very good. So I remember getting into the Final Four and just being so hungry, you know, to not let myself repeat what had happened the year before. You know, that moment was pretty special for me.
Yeah.
And, you know, Andre Dignelli, who helped me throughout my equitation career, I think he was just always so calm. And I think that I just respected that so much that I try to do that now when I'm teaching. You know, I think it made such a difference to have someone. He was just no moment was too big. No moment was any different. You know, we always obviously came super prepared, and, you know, we really felt ready for any challenge that they were going to throw at us, whether it be USET finals or an indoor final, or even, you know, Southampton out on the grass. I always knew we came super prepared. And I think just Andre's energy, always just being so calm, cool, and collected through, you know, the good and the bad moments is really something that helped, you know, not only myself, but all of his students be so successful.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. That's awesome.
I also think that sometimes, you know, for me, when it's obviously I get nervous, you know, I feel the nerves every now and then, but it's more of an adrenaline rush. I think nowadays I'll get it sometimes before a jump off of a big class, you know, before the Grand Prix, and you'll see someone go before you, and you see that, you know, them put up a new leading time. And it's almost like I want to do it. You know, let me at it kind of energy and emotion versus a nervous emotion. You know, you get that competitive edge, and it, you know, I guess if anything, I have to just kind of stay cool and not let myself get, you know, too ahead of myself, because I think if anything, it's more of an adrenaline rush than anything.
Right. Right. And that you interpret it that way, right? The adrenaline might be the same, but someone who's nervous is then fearful of outcome, whereas you're hungry to create outcome. Like, let me go create a great ride, you know, like that's just a different lens a little bit.
Yes, I would say so, for sure.
Yeah. 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 Do you know, I think it's really helpful to talk about mistakes and to normalize them. And I think one of the common myths that we all have, and I think this is something all athletes share, is that they think one day they'll be so good at a sport that they won't make any mistakes and it just won't be a problem anymore. But mistakes, even little tiny mistakes, are just part of performance. That's just like, that's a normal thing. And so therefore we also need like a normal way to handle them. And so one of the things that can help is like being able to look back and recognize when we've made a mistake, that when we look back on it, it's like, wow, that's actually made me so much stronger or better as a result of the learning that happened there. Are there any mistakes that stand out for you, however small or simple, that you were like, okay, yeah, that was something I totally had like a growth moment from that?
Yeah, you know, I think I circled back to it earlier, but, you know, whether you're winning or you're losing, you know, you always try to take away something from every round, every horse, every experience, you know, try to learn something. And, you know, even going back to Caristo, the Hunter Derby in Michigan, which was kind of my last preparation before Derby finals, he actually won the first round, and he was having a beautiful handy round, and I rushed the trot jump. It was just kind of just something that I let myself take for granted. He's a really good trot jumper, and I kind of whipped around the turn. He broke down to the trot, and I jumped ahead, and he ended up falling to fifth after the second round. It wasn't catastrophic. It wasn't a huge deal, but for sure it separated, it probably kept him out of winning. I was just a little bit of a bobbling trot jump. And I think, when I came out of the ring, Kate Conover, who works with me, she's like, you won't let that happen again for a while. Like it's, you have little mistakes here and there that kind of ground you again and just kind of reminds you like, hey, don't let that happen again. Or, you could have set that up better. So just, I think it's always important not to be frustrated, that I ended up 5th on that horse there, but to think like, for the future, don't let it happen again. Try not to make the same mistake twice.
Right. Like take it. Yeah. Take it, any frustration or any moment of like disappointment of like, let that be resilience to like, make sure that it's better next time.
Right.
Yeah. That's a great example. Yeah. So speaking of Kate, like you've ridden with so many amazing trainers over the years. I'd love to hear if there's any particular words of advice that have stuck with you or anything you'd like to share that way.
Well, I guess we'll start with my mom, who's been more of a supporter for me and obviously, the backbone to this entire operation and everything that I've ever done. She's a big planner and her big motto would be that, there's always another horse show next week, which is so true. Just keeping it cool and letting things go. And Bill Ellis has helped me. I mean, he basically lived with us when I was younger and my mom was competing as an amateur. He taught me how to canter. He did a lot of things with me at a very young age and all the way through until now. He's always been, to some degree, a mentor or, there to lend a little advice here and there when I'm struggling or there's a horse that I need help with. He's kind of always like, my voice of reason. And he's really big, I would say, on less is more. If you're schooling a horse and it's jumping great, why keep going? Stop, quit while you're ahead. And and then obviously Kim Stewart was huge, and she teach me. Oh God, Kim Stewart taught me, from ponies all the way up until the junior hunters and into the jumper ranks, and really taught me a lot about horsemanship and listening to the horses and ponies and, the importance of riding the rhythm and listening to the horses. She was huge with that. I mean, she really did teach me, my feel and my natural, I guess, ride for a horse. And then obviously Andre and the equitation, I would say if I had to put into 3 words would be all about preparation. You never went anywhere feeling like you hadn't, done everything you could to be prepared for that event, or you hadn't seen everything that they're going to throw at you, whether it be a different jump or a certain line or, he's just so into preparation and feeling really ready for the event. And then I would say more recently with McLean, I would say he's really big on setting goals. He's obviously super organized and very goal oriented and just kind of working backwards from those goals. Yeah. And I think having been in that operation for 2 winters now, it taught me for sure that it's important to set goals, and that's the only way you ever start working towards them. So. Right. You got to lay it out a little bit. Yeah. No, that's great. Yeah. What a great wealth of knowledge and inspiration that you have and that you've shared. Thank you so much. That's fantastic. It was wonderful speaking with you, and I wish you all the success in the future. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It was great talking with you.
Hello, this is Dr. Marty Adams, equine nutritionist for Legends Horse Feeds. The secret is out. The next wave of Legends Horse Feeds and supplements is here. Many of the feeds you've grown to love are still in the Legends line and have received exciting new enhancements. We've added Legends Fibergized Omega to our lineup, joining us from the Penfield line. This feed has been a proven winner for performance horses for many years. What else can you expect from the next wave of Legends? Low starch and sugar formulas, high fat options, added prebiotic and probiotic cultures, added flax to support hoof, muscle, joint, and immune system function, amino acid fortification, and organic trace minerals. Of course, we'll continue to utilize advanced technology and quality research provided by our partners at Kentucky Equine Research. An exciting feature is that we've now blended Legends Gastric Care technology into all our performance feeds for added gastric support. So be sure to check out the next wave of Legends feeds and supplements where there truly is a feed for every need. Learn more at legendshorsefeed.com.
Is your horse a hard keeper? Are you tired of feeding 3 or more supplements daily and still have yet to see desired results? Make feeding simple again with Excel Supplements. Our proprietary camelina oil is easy to feed and covers many of your horse's needs. With as little as 2 pumps a day, this powerful omega oil has been proven to help with joint pain, muscle development, reduce recovery time, and aid in preventing hindgut ulceration while building your horse's top line. Excel's camelina oil is grown and produced by Excel for your animal's overall health. Order risk-free at excelsupplements.com.
Dr. Eddie O'Connor is a clinical sports psychologist specializing in performance anxiety and perfectionism. He is a fellow and certified mental performance consultant through the Association of Applied Sports Psychology and member of the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee Sports Psychology Registry. Dr. O'Connor is author and host of The Psychology of Performance: How to Be Your Best in Life Through the Great Courses, and owner of Success Stories Membership, an online community of high achievers developing the physical and mental skills needed to perform with consistency and excellence. Thank you for joining me today, Eddie. It's great to have you here.
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks so much. Appreciate the invite.
Yeah, absolutely. So I brought you on, and I know that being a clinical sports psychologist, there are a million things you and I can chat about, but I particularly was drawn to what you just recently had was a course on optimizing your sleep habits and sleep. Yeah. And so that I was like, you know what, my listeners, we are a group who we are already, worried and concerned and trying our best to get sleep before horse shows. And so I thought that would be a great topic for us to dive into today.
Yeah, I'm really glad you picked it out because in my career, for whatever reason, I've drawn a lot of perfectionists and a lot of performance anxiety. So I really started to specialize in that. And as I was putting together this mini workshop, I was like, well, what's the best thing that I could do? And what I found in my work is that I won't even do mental training with my athletes until I know they're getting at least 7, preferably 8 hours of sleep, because it's that important.
Right.
If they're not sleeping, I could teach them a bunch of stuff, but it's like, trying to fill a bucket filled with holes. And so we'll get into it, but sleep is by far the number one performance enhancer. So I'm excited to be here and share some information.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so what are some basic, baseline kind of informational items, would you say, for all athletes to kind of know about sleep?
Really, the first thing that comes to my mind is a respect for it. For whatever reason, we have a culture that glorifies the warriors that don't sleep, that sacrifice everything, and in work, or at school, it's like, wow, I stayed up all night, or I'm the first one up in the morning to train early, and then I train late at night. And, we're always cutting out sleep as the first thing to get more time. And it's rewarded. People are, think that it's a badge of honor, about, gosh, I only got 5 hours sleep. And it's killing people, with no exaggeration, beyond performance. When you're getting under 6 hours regularly, you're doing real serious damage to your body. And for athletes, on the flip side of it is that when you are being able to get even from 8 to 9, right? Because you usually think 8 hours is enough sleep. Well, I hate that word too. That's another tangent I could go on here, but what's enough sleep? Do we ever go around and be like, what's enough food? What's enough water? Do I just really want the minimum? As athletes, we're never satisfied with the minimum. We don't even want the average. But in sleep, it's always that question about, well, what's enough? And they found that there are performance enhancing effects when you go from 8 to 9. Now, I realize that a lot of people can't necessarily get that. However, it's important to respect it in the sense that that is what's possible and what it does to our biology.
Which is what? What kinds of things are improved with sleep? Like attention, reaction time, those kinds of things, I would assume?
Yeah. I mean, there's really everything. There's no organ in your body. There is no process in your biological system that's not either enhanced or inhibited by the amount of sleep that you're getting. So from an athletic perspective, I think by far the first thing that we would see is muscle growth, for example. And it's very, very specific. So as a CrossFitter, and I had to put this in because one of the rules of CrossFit is to always talk about CrossFit. And so now I can check that off the box. But if you go to work out, you get the greatest dump of HGH, human growth hormone, in your brain during the first cycle of stage 3 sleep, which is deep sleep, which often happens before midnight. So as athletes, when we start going to bed late, we really can't make up this opportunity to get the greatest human growth hormone into our bodies. So for people who are going to the gym and you want more strength, you're missing an opportunity to go to bed late because all sleep isn't created equally. It's later in the night and early mornings that we actually get our most REM sleep, which really helps with emotional regulation. So you talked about anxiety. So if we're getting up early, we're cutting out some of our optimal times of when we get the most REM sleep. And then we're going to suffer a little bit more emotionally because we're not getting that maximum opportunity to regenerate our emotional health. But skill, motor learning, that happens overnight. You don't learn it as you're doing it. You might have had that experience where you can't get it. You can't get this skill or this movement. You're doing it over and over again. You go to sleep and you wake up and all of a sudden you just got it. Well, that's a process of sleep because it enhances learning and memory. And I could go on and on, but I think we only got 20, 25 minutes. But we could just go through. There's nothing. You said focus, yes. Mood, yes. Creativity, yes. Memory, yes. Everything's affected.
Right. No, absolutely. I chuckled when you were saying that there's a jump from 8 to 9 hours. I honestly can't remember the last time I got 9 hours. I would love to get 9 hours. I'm thrilled with 8, but that is always a personal goal. But I know that as we consider going to competition for us as riders, we often, our schedules are such that we have an athlete on the team who can't take themselves out of their stall and do what they need to do in the morning. So we have to be there. And that often means we have to get up at, 5 in the morning, 5:30, 6, whatever it is that may not be the norm for us. So we're actually changing. I know that there's a lot around sleep, around, having norms and routines and all of that. And our competition life often requires us to be adjusting the sleep that we typically get. So I know that, and I don't know, I guess I'm not phrasing this in a very succinct question, but how would you approach that when we know we're going to have to get up earlier than normal?
Yeah, no, actually, you phrased it really well because this is what I hear from my athletes as well. And this is, even you started out this way, right? Where you're like, look, I'm just happy to get the 9 or to get the 8.
8, yeah.
And that goes back to the first aspect of what we're talking about of understanding, well, what this can do, and then fitting it in and saying, hey, sleep it's not a luxury. It's not a present. This is actually something that I want to start to prioritize into my training. And then here's the second part. Now you're actually going to be able to get a competitive advantage because for your riders, that part of the challenge of your sport is the schedule that's going to interfere with optimal training. Now, none of us have optimal training, or most of us don't. I mean, few of us have lives that we're in complete control of that we can center around our training. But I know you do this as well too, Tanya. We've talked about this before. It's how you adapt to it. Everybody's got the same challenge or similar challenges. So it makes sense that how I adapt to it is going to give me a competitive advantage against other riders. So the first thing I'd love to say to your audience here is do not get caught up in all the things that you can't do. Yes, it's absolutely true that if you can go to bed at the same time and get up at the same time, that's the number one performance enhancer. But if you can't do that, then skip it and go to number 2. Like, just forget about a consistent sleep schedule. It doesn't matter that it's the best thing to do. What's going to matter is what's the thing that you actually can do.
Right.
And so, for example, I think the best thing for your audience would be the power of naps. There is a misunderstanding that we can catch up on sleep. Okay, well, I'm just going to bowl through this competition. I'll catch up on my sleep afterwards. Well, once the damage is done, the damage is done. There is no such thing as catching up on sleep. But what there is that you can bank sleep. So if you know that you've got a competition this weekend and you can't get the sleep that you want, you can get as much sleep the nights before that so that your brain is storing sort of those Z's. And then that way, when you get under the situation where you would normally be sleep deprived, because you've got the bank of sleep, what we found is that you don't get the detrimental effects on your performance as bad as if you were just kind of, going through it. So you can bank sleep. And the best ways to do that, of course, are if you can get your 8 or 9 a day or two before the competition, you'll have it saved up. Or if you can take a power nap. And I think it's important to go through the details here. Power naps there's a structure to them. Because of the way our sleep is structured, you want to keep them in the light stages of sleep. So a 10, 15, 20-minute power nap is ideal. It keeps you in the light stage of sleep. You get the restorative and the learning effects of it, but you don't get into the deep sleep, stages 3 and 4. And you don't want to do that because if you take an hour nap, for example, you wake up in the middle of that, your brain is still sluggish and you get like this sleep hangover and you're kind of messed up for a little while afterwards or sometimes for the rest of the day. If you get the opportunity to take a longer nap, you can try to get it around 90 minutes, which is a sleep cycle that'll take you from the light sleep to the deep sleep to the REM and then get you back to the light where you can wake up again in about 90 minutes. So choosing one of those time frames is going to get you the maximum performance effects. Okay. And if you can store up on those ahead of time or in that day where you've been sleep deprived and you've got a competition at night, but you can get a nap during the day, if you keep it to that ideally 20 minutes, you'll get performance enhancing effects.
Okay. That's really good to know. And that's interesting about the banking. A lot of times for amateurs and juniors going to competition, they are often leaving home on a Thursday or a Friday for, 3 or 4 days of competition. So the beginning of the week, the hard part about that. And so the resistance that I already have to it is like so many people are like trying to compensate for being away from home, whether it's work or family or school responsibilities. And they're like kind of cramming. And so sleep may suffer, but I think it's a good note for people to recognize like, hey, don't cut the sleep in those days leading up to the show. What you're sacrificing is potentially far greater than you even realize.
Yeah. And I'm big with my athletes on the idea of being intentional because it's hard to put out these rules and say, well, we can't give up this. I can't give up. Like, what am I supposed to do if I've got homework due tomorrow? I have to travel. My parents want me to do these chores. I've got practice till 9 at night. I have to get up at 5 a.m. And it's like, I don't have a whole lot of control in my life. So the idea there is I respect that there may be times that you have to sacrifice your sleep. I realize that there are times that you have to do that. And as long as you're doing it with choice and intention and you understand what you're doing, don't do it with guilt. Don't feel bad. You're not a bad person. But I also don't want you to do it just like that's the first thing that's going to go through. Or again, what I see with a lot of my athletes is it's not all or none. It's not like you couldn't get more sleep because if you're on your phone for an hour or two during the day when you could have been doing your homework instead, if you just want to chill out and relax because you've had such a stressful day and you watch 3 episodes of something on Netflix rather than getting to bed on time, those are things that I understand. A lot of my athletes are doing that because they just want the rest and recovery, but that's kind of numbing out. If you really do need to rest and recover, there is nothing better than sleep. It's not as enjoyable, but I promise you do this for just a couple of days. I have not had one athlete in the last few years since I've been really prioritizing this that doesn't come back and be like, oh my gosh, I feel different. I've been able to lift more. I think quickly. I make less mistakes. They've shown this at the pro level. They have this one study of a basketball player just when he got more than 8 hours and less than 8 hours. And his free throw percentage, his 3-point percentage, his minutes played, his penalties, everything was in the positive direction. And that's just more or less than 8 hours. So, oh my gosh, what's happening to us when we're getting 6 and 7? The other big thing is injury risk. Every hour less than 9 that we get, our athletic injury risk so dramatically increases. And that's the other thing too, is that, nobody wants to get injured, but boy, because of how much health benefits are coming and restorative properties in the physical healing of your body every day after we're taxing it with training, it's not only just the mental acuity and emotions, but what it's going to do to keep you safe. There's really, once you really start to digest this, you may have to miss your sleep, but please don't do it without actually considering what you're really giving up. Which, if I can keep rambling, there's one other big thing here. We don't know we're sleep deprived when we're sleep deprived. I'm going to say that again. You might have maybe it's a bad example, but it's very true. If you've ever been around somebody who's drank too much and they're like, I can drive, and you're looking at them and like, no, you're drunk, you can't drive. That's what we're like when we're sleep deprived. Everybody thinks that I'm fine. I can do it. However, it's part of the detrimental thinking that we get when we are sleep deprived that we can't see ourselves with actual clarity and notice the decreases in our performance. So we can get used to 7 and say, well, I'm fine. I'm doing okay. And I would say that maybe you are. but you could be doing a lot better, and you will be doing a lot better when you get 8 or when you get more than that. So whatever improvement that you're going to get, you just can't beat the science. If you're sleeping 8, you're going to do better than you're doing when you're sleeping 6, whether you think so or not.
Right.
You can't trust that thinking.
Right. Got it. Yeah. Another piece, so being intentional for sure, like making choices, prioritizing sleep, respecting it, the idea of napping intentionally too, like having a particular amount of time, whether you close your eyes and set your alarm to make sure you don't like overstep the 20 minutes if you don't have 90. Like that's a really good tip for sure. I think one thing that also comes up for a lot of the clients I work with, you know, who may have perfectionistic tendencies is this whole judgment that occurs when they're awake and they're not sleeping, but they know they should be. And this whole negative spiral. And really, there's so much judgment that comes. So not only now, maybe they don't have enough sleep, but then they're also waking up feeling stressed because they know they didn't do a good job sleeping. Do you know what I mean? So it's like
I know exactly,
the compound. Yeah, right. That compound effect. How can we help people accept where they're at and be able to handle that kind of situation so it's not so detrimental?
Yeah. So I've got a couple great ones for you. First is this rule. Once you go to bed, never again look at the clock until you get up.
Yeah.
Because,
for sure.
And I would even go so far and say, and I did this actually just last night, I had to get up for something. And as much as I could, I had like little night lights to the bathroom and stuff. But anything I did, I actually did it with my eyes closed because of the biology. Right. You get a little bit of light going in there, but gosh forbid. I mean, you look at the clock and then you start doing the mental math of how many hours you had, how many more you have. And if you just block that all out, keep your eyes closed, roll over and just continue to relax, that's going to avoid a lot of that triggering worry and math. So don't look at the clock.
Can I just interject 1 second? For me,
sure,
that I think a big thing that was a big change. I actually have like a small, like 2x2 inch battery powered clock that I set an alarm with. So getting away from your screen in the morning, like there's just no temptation. It's like, not that I'm going to look at it, but that's what it is. So I've removed the temptation to even use a screen because like you said, there's nothing like light to wake you up. So making sure that there's no screen potential whatsoever, I think is maybe could add to what you just said.
Yeah, I wasn't even going to get into that, or at least until later, but that is actually very true. A couple of hours even before you go to bed. One of the biggest things in my adolescent and college population is, I mean, we understand that we're attached to devices, our laptops and our cell phones, but the blue light that's coming from them, and that's specifically blue light, it just sends an activating response to your brain to say, wake up. So particularly in the middle of the night, if you just check your phone quickly for a couple texts, you're sending a biological message to wake up. And so one of the best things that you can do, and blue light glasses help, and using nighttime mode on your laptop and computer will help. But I've even noticing with my athletes, and they think, okay, well, then that blocks it and I'm okay. I'm like, no, it helps. It gets you a percentage of that stuff blocked, but it's still coming through. It's not, you're not imperative to it. So with that, I would say that's one of the biggest practical suggestions in general to help yourself go to bed at night is to shut down the computers and the phones earlier. But the other thing, going back to the perfectionism, is to start talking about it differently. We always say, I want to go to sleep. And as athletes, we were judging ourselves by our outcomes. Did I win first or second? What's my performance, right? Sports Psychology 101 is about focusing on the process over the outcome. Well, if we apply that to sleep, I encourage your athletes to stop thinking about at night that I got to go to sleep, because now you're all consumed with the outcome and what what you're trying to accomplish. I have a colleague that said when he goes to bed at night, what he's doing is he's going to relax, because that's the process. So whether it's things that will help you relax at night, like soft music or prayer or a warm bath is one of the best things that you can do, because it enhances your biology by warming up your body. When you get out of the tub, your body cools off and it lowers your core body temperature, which is a biological signal to help enhance sleep in addition to the relaxation. But if you take some time and structure your day with the quiet lights, relaxation, and then you get into bed with the intent to say, my job here isn't to go to sleep. My job here is to relax and relax your muscles or listen to a meditation or whatever it is that will help you do that, sleep will naturally occur.
Right.
And so anything that's the opposite of that, if you're in bed, and here's another strategy, is that you should not do homework or watch TV or anything else in bed because it should just be for sleep. And if you protect that and you don't worry in bed, if you got to worry, get out of bed, write a list of when you're going to take care of your worries, but don't bring that worry into bed. You want to kind of set it up as a place that when I get into bed, it's like a trigger to encourage the relaxation. And just keep your mind on the specific goal that the only job I have right now when I'm in bed is to relax. Think relaxing thoughts, and just be very, as I used this word earlier, intentional about it. We go to sleep every night, no matter how hard it is or easy it is. So we've kind of now, after several decades on this earth, kind of feeling like we're entitled to it or it's just going to happen. And for the most part, it will kind of be forced. But if you want to improve the quality of it, I think it has a lot to do with the intention that you go to bed with. And if you go with the focus, my perfectionist, I'm talking to you, if you want to be the perfect perfectionist, you're going to kind of go in here and say, well, how do I be perfect about going to sleep? Right? And if you're going to worry and do these other things that's going to hurt it, realize that that's taking you away from it. So how do I perfectly go to sleep? Well, the only answer is to do the things that will relax your body and slow your mind.
Right. And I like what you said about focusing on the process of it, right? And not the outcome, because that's triggering all of those judgments and all of that worry and concern about number and, all of that. And I think that really makes sense. I think that's difficult. A couple of things come to mind. One is when so many people, when we go to horse shows, we're in hotels. When you're in a hotel, everything happens in your bed. There isn't a lot of other room. So perhaps you could get up and remake the bed, give yourself a small routine or a ritual around, okay, so now I'm transitioning. Maybe I did have to sit in bed to do homework, but now I'm getting up because now it's time to switch gears and, I'm going to take a shower and reset the bed as this is relaxation time. You know what I mean? Somehow creating
I would
a
even
transition.
challenge that though, Tanya. I would say and said, I don't know, I think every hotel I've ever been in at least has a desk.
I know, but do people
even
really
dorm
sit
rooms,
at the desk? I know, but I'm just being a realist. Okay.
Well,
yeah.
But I'm being realistic too. If you decide to do something that's going to hurt your sleep, it doesn't matter whether it feels good or not. And I'm glad we got here because I'm like, yes, these choices are going to be difficult. They're going to be uncomfortable, just like winning a championship is. If you want to be in the top 1%, you can't do what 99% of the other people are doing.
Totally.
And so I'm with you. This is hard, and this is going to require sacrifice. But I'll tell you, I got 3 kids off at college, and every one of them has got a beanbag because even in their tiny dorm rooms, and they don't like sitting at the desk either. They want to be more comfortable. But they've learned through what I've talked about, you can't do your homework in bed. Your bed is for sleeping. So they'll do their homework in a beanbag, and they fit it into a tiny, tiny dorm room. And so you'll find something else or don't. I mean, if you don't want to and it's worth it to you to do your homework in bed, then I just say it's not fair for you to come and complain that you can't sleep. Yeah. I'm like, well, you haven't done everything in order to maximize your sleep. And so it's a non-judgmental, non-moral choice, but just know that it's a choice. And you can pick and do whatever you want. I'm just saying you can't beat the science because it doesn't feel good.
Yeah, no, for sure. The more I think, and this is sort of a theme of this, of today, I talked at the top of the show about curiosity. I think one of the things that's so key that is important for us as athletes is to continue to stay curious and figure yourself out. So you may have some specific things you do to help yourself relax, to help yourself sleep that maybe you won't find on a list or, anywhere else, but that, for you personally make a huge difference. And I would say to gather some of the ideas that we've chatted with, but also to really listen to yourself. For example, I had a book club last year during COVID that was when we were more restricted and I could actually read more than a book a month, which is not the case now, but I read Breath, right? Do you remember? Did you read that? Did we talk about that, Eddie? That book, Breath?
We talked about it. I didn't read it though. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so one of the suggestions in there is talking about through getting quality of breathing that for you to tape your mouth when you sleep because it improves the amount that you're breathing through your nose, which in turn improves quality of sleep. And I will tell you, that's an example of something I pulled from this book that I now use this very delicate cloth tape that you can buy like for sensitive skin or whatever. Anyway, I know it sounds really bizarre. I tape my mouth. The quality of my sleep is exponentially improved through this. So this isn't something I necessarily, this was just discovery and like, all right, I'm going to try this crazy thing. It sounds weird. And it actually was scary the first time I did it, but it now come to find out, wow, that's like huge. And this is making a huge difference. So I think that one of the things that I would just add to this whole conversation is just knowing yourself and knowing what works and just continuing to explore.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I'm actually going to try that. I hadn't heard that one. That's good. And the other thing is, here's one where I would say people are I find on the fence about, because I think there are some general things that, like when people are like, oh, I can drink caffeine and it won't bother me. I'm like, that's not true. Like, I don't, some people are more or less sensitive compared to other people, but within your own biology, if you're going to have caffeine, it's going to keep you more awake then and disturb your sleep if it wouldn't. Alcohol is going to interfere with the quality of your sleep. Even though you're knocked out, it's not restorative sleep. So there's just some rules that, be careful if you think what's working or what isn't. This isn't like you can make up your own science. But when we talk about what's relaxing at night, people have asked a lot about, well, should I read? And like, that's one where I'm like, you know what? It's really 50-50. I found some people that if they're reading and it's a book that keeps them up and they're really interested in it, or watching TV and they're really engaged, that's very activating and it actually hurts their sleep. But I've heard others that kind of say, no, I just really kind of numb out. I don't pay attention, or I just read 2 or 3 pages and I feel more relaxed, even though I've got the light on. And they're like, it really helps me. And those are ones that I'd kind of say are the ones that you have to test out and say, is it going to work or isn't it? But yeah, that idea with the tape over the mouth, that's very curious.
Yeah. Anyway, something to explore. I'll share another personal example. I had this period about probably 4 years ago where I think due to hormone changes and stuff, I was having this problem of waking up in the middle of the night and not falling back asleep. And I had an important show coming up, and I decided to create a rule that if I woke up in the middle of the night, first of all, I was doing what you were talking about, keeping my eyes closed for, not letting no light, all of that. But then I also had this idea I was only allowed to visit happy memories. I did not go to a place, there I am laying awake. What does this mean for tomorrow? What's going to happen tomorrow? How am I going to feel? There was no future thinking. Like, it was only just putting my mind in a place of a happy horse show memory of like things working, riding well, feeling rested, like feeling like alert, like, you know what I mean? Like, so, and I just sort of walked myself sort of happily through a memory that then would be relaxing. The effect was that it was relaxing and then I went back to sleep. But I think it's important for people that when waking up in the middle of the night, you can totally choose. You got to remember that you're choosing still what you're thinking about, right? So I think people go to a stressed place and you want to make sure you're making a good choice about that.
Yeah, and let me throw a little biology in there too. Like, I want everybody to understand that our brains are built with this negativity bias. It's a real thing. And our survival instinct is for our brain to worry about stuff. And if you care about your athletics and you're perfectionistic in particular, the idea of not doing well ends up being a big threat. So your biological drive is for your mind to go to those dark, worried places. There's nothing wrong with you. This is just biology. And the more you care, the more you're actually going to worry. So what that means is when people tell you not to worry and cut it out, if you don't know exactly where you want to put your mind instead, your biological default is going to be to worry. So I love your suggestion, Tanya, because what that is you're like, oh, I've got this memory that I want to choose to focus on. And as long as you know where you want your attention to be, as long as you're focusing on that, well, then you're not worrying. You're not thinking about time. You're not thinking about your family. You're not thinking about your bills. Like, everything else disappears. It's always coming down to the idea of what's the one thing that I want to dedicate my focus on and use all my mental strength to focus in on that. Right. And then everything else will take care of it. The more you try not to worry or the more you try not to do something, the more it shows up. 5-second quiz right here. Everybody, whatever you do, don't think about chocolate. Go. What's in your mind? Right? Everybody's thinking about Snickers bars, cake, chocolate milk, whatever.
Yeah.
And the more you try not to do something, your brain says, okay, I'll be sure not to do that. Let me look and be sure that it doesn't show up. And it becomes more intense in searching it out to be sure that it's not there. It's called the ironic response of the brain. So for all the worriers and perfectionists and performance anxiety out there, the more you don't want something, the more you have it. And so, much to your point, if you can really identify your to-do list, like your performance plan.
Right.
What is it exactly that I'm going to do in order to go to sleep? And the strength of your commitment to do that is going to change things.
Right. Definitely. Yeah. No, that makes so much sense. And I really appreciate your perspective. And I think it's helpful to have some specific tips. Hopefully people are taking away from this conversation some specific tips. And I know they can find more. You have a sleep course, the workshop you mentioned. Is that something people can access?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's real fun because it's nice and short. So it's just a mini workshop. And I've got a bunch of handouts that'll help you actually identify where your biggest barriers are, specifically how to overcome them. It includes a whole summary of the whole workshop. I even added as a bonus a pre-workshop if you want to get into the science of it. Mm-hmm. Something we didn't get to talk about, but there's adenosine, which is a sleep hormone that drives your sleep urge, and how caffeine affects that. If I could throw in really quickly, if you are drinking Monster drinks or caffeine into the late afternoon, the half-life of caffeine will last a good 5 to 7 hours. So if you have a double espresso, to wake yourself up because you're tired in the afternoon, well, at 9 o'clock, you might as well be taking one shot of espresso because half of it's still in your system. So this workshop is, it's recorded and then you'll get instant access, and it's at bit.ly, bit.ly/sleep to the top. And you'll get instant access. It's just really rich for Sleep for Performance.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, and really appreciate it. It was fun talking with you. And gosh, I'm all excited to go to sleep tonight now. I'm gonna rededicate. I'm rededicating my efforts. So this will be good.
Yeah, I'm gonna go get some tape and
yeah, right. All right. Sounds good, Andy. Thanks so much.
Just because the temperatures are starting to heat up doesn't mean that your horse has to suffer the effects of heat stress. The most innovative technology to manage heat stress and exertion in horses is finally here. This summer, Vitalize brings you a product unlike any other on the market, Vitalize Blazin'. The proprietary blend of proven ingredients found in Blazin' support blood flow and cooling, promote cellular hydration, enhance exercise tolerance, and help support stamina, especially when temperatures are elevated. Don't get beat by the heat this summer. Visit vitalizeeq.com to learn more about Blazin' and the other products in the Vitalize line.
Don't you love opening your mailbox and seeing something in there you actually want? Something in there that isn't a bill, political mail, or a donation request? Something you want. Subscribe to the Plaid Horse magazine and we'll deliver that feeling 9 times a year. That's right, you can subscribe to the Plaid Horse magazine. That way you'll never miss an issue. Sign up at theplaidhorse.com.
Have you ever wondered how to keep your horse sound and how to prevent future lameness issues? Have you had to deal with abscesses, stone bruises, laminitis, navicular, or soft tissue damage in the hoof capsule? Or maybe you're a farrier and you want to learn how top vets around the world diagnose and treat various hoof care issues. The Humble Hoof is a podcast for both owners and professionals discussing the health of the hoof and soundness of your horse. Check us out, published twice a month on Horse Radio Network.
Find the links to today's guests and the show notes at theplaidhorse.com/listen. You can follow The Plaid Horse on Facebook and Instagram. Just search for The Plaid Horse. You can follow Tanya at Tanya Johnson Mental Skills Coach on Facebook or Instagram at Inside Your Ride. You can have all of the Horse Radio Network shows with you wherever you go with our free app for iPhone and Android. Go to your app store and search Horse Radio Network. You can also subscribe via iTunes. Please rate and review our shows on iTunes. 5-star reviews help people discover our show. And if you enjoy our conversation, please share it with your friends. Thanks to our sponsors, Taylor Harris Insurance Services and the Plaid Horse Magazine. If you have a question about your mental skills for riding, please message me on Facebook or Instagram. Please stay tuned to this episode for a chapter of Show Strides coming up next. Inside Your Ride is available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. Remember, focus is a skill. Use it to make every ride great.
You're listening to Show Strides, Moving Up and Moving On by Piper Clem and Rennie Dyball. Copyright 2019, The Plaid Horse. Read by Piper Clem. Chapter 3. With just a couple of weeks left before summer break, everyone at Tally's Middle School, Johnston West, felt antsy. It seemed like no one could sit still in classes, and the lunchroom was louder and more boisterous than usual. Tally's best friend from school, Caitlin Rowe, also took lessons at Oaks. Tally loved blending her two worlds together. Most of her school friends knew nothing about horses, and most of her barn friends, including Mac, went to other schools. "What is wrong with these 7th grade boys?" Caitlin asked with huff, sitting down on the floor next to Tally. It was tradition for 7th graders to sit on the floor in the cafeteria, something Tally thought was exceedingly dumb. Luckily, they'd be graduating to actual tables next year. "What do you mean? Oh, hey, Ava," Tally said, greeting their other friend. Ava crossed one ankle in front of the other and sat down between her friends, all in one graceful motion. Ava used to ride, but traded horses for gymnastics last fall. Tally had always pined for a pony like Ava's until she cat-trotted him herself and found out he was a lot tougher than he looked. "Ava, do you ever get made fun of for wearing your leotard?" Caitlin asked. Ava wrinkled her nose as she pulled a lunch bag out of her backpack. "What do you mean?" "I was reading a book about equitation before gym, and those boys from our history class were neighing at me," Caitlin said. Tally remembered the same thing happening to her at the beginning of the school year. "They're so stupid," Ava said, rolling her eyes. "You know that 6th grader Jacob? He rides too, and the way they make fun of him is so horrible. I saw it during study hall one day. They say he's in a girl's sport and he shouldn't be a rider. They called him some awful names. Jacob didn't say anything back. I just felt so bad for him." The bell rang and the girls said goodbye to one another before heading off to their next classes. Tally felt a little guilty for being so upset about having a boy neigh at her. Ava was right. It was stupid, and apparently it could be a whole lot worse. She thought back to the boy she saw talking to Brenna at the barn the other day. Was that Jacob from her school? That afternoon, Tally had another shift on the school aisle. The barn manager, Brenna, had given her an unofficial working student position to earn a second lesson each week. Her parents provided the other. Tally never minded the extra work. She loved any time she got to spend around horses. Mucking stalls wasn't the most fun barn chore, of course, but it was well worth it. "Do you ever get jealous of the kids who don't have to work for extra lessons?" Mac asked her recently. Mac had quickly become Tally's best friend at the barn, and they found they could talk about anything. "I have before, yeah," Tally answered honestly. "But working for a lesson is no big deal. It's more about wishing I had a horse or a pony of my own and could show more often, you know? Like that's a given for some kids. So I guess I am a little jealous of that." Mac nodded, her expression thoughtful. "But my dad tells me that being jealous doesn't accomplish anything," Tally continued. "And honestly, he's right. So I try to focus on what I do have. And right now I have a really cool pony to ride." Tally arrived a little early for her shift that afternoon when school let out, so she ducked into the Field Ridge tack room first to wipe down her saddle. She and her parents had chipped in to buy it from an Oaks rider named Isabel who'd grown too tall for it. Tally had never owned her own saddle before and took great pride in keeping it in pristine condition. "Tal!" Ryan's booming voice had a way of crashing through the quiet on the border aisle. Tally stuck her head out of the tack room and gave him a wave. "Hey, there you are," he said, walking toward her. "I want to give you and your parents a call in the next couple of days to talk about summer shows." "Great," Tally said, feeling that now familiar rush of horse show excitement. She and G had competed in just a couple of shows together thus far, but it felt like the pony was progressing super fast. "I think Goose could be something really special and could get sold as early as this August," Ryan said. "We need to get more miles on him. Different places, different shows. What are your plans for the summer anyway?" "To ride?" Ryan laughed. "Well, good. That's what I was hoping for." They hashed out some more details about the days that Tally would be working for Brenna, and Ryan said he'd call Tally's parents that night to talk about the shows. He had a few in mind that would put G in the best position to be sold as an eligible green. Ponies only had a year of eligibility for the green divisions, so the plan was to show Goose in the children's ponies so that when he got sold, he'd be able to compete in the small green division. All of this terminology had been new to Tally just a few months prior, but she followed everything Ryan was saying now. It was hard to keep from getting too attached to G, but she pushed the thought of him getting sold from her mind. Instead, she focused on making sure her mom and dad said yes to whatever shows Ryan wanted them to do. But her parents surprised her that night. "It sounds like you have a lot of competing to do this summer," Tally's dad said casually after dinner. "You talked to Ryan already? It's a yes?" Her mom smiled before answering. "It's a yes to the shows, but the only reason we're allowing so many is because it's almost summertime. During the school year, your education continues to come first. Got it?" "I got it. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, guys." Tally felt like she could start crying. She was so excited. But with less than a week left of 7th grade, school was the last thing on her mind. Her summer show season with G was about to begin, and their first stop would be a big equestrian complex an hour away.